everyone. Thanks for joining the CaFÉ webinar. My name is Justine Chappell, and I'm the Communications and Marketing Manager for CaFÉ. In today's webinar, I'm going to be showing you the entire jury administration process in CaFÉ. So I'll be giving a full tutorial about how to conduct your jury from start to finish, with the exception of the juror portion that we won't be covering closely, but I will mention it. The main key items that we'll cover today include setting up the jury scorecard options, creating and assigning juror accounts, using the jury scores to change application statuses, and then notifying artists of the jury results. As you can see, I'm logged in here into CaFÉ as an administrator. Before we go over the jury administration page, I'll first just take a moment to kind of set the scene for us. I'll go ahead and open a call. So here's a call that we have that the application window has closed, and we have 27 applications in the received status. So, you may choose to start setting up your jury settings that we'll go over ahead of time, but just for the purposes of this hypothetical scenario, everything's closed and we've got the applications that we're going to be jurying. Obviously, some of you folks might be dealing with a lot more than 27 applications, but you'll get to see the process that will apply to any number of applications. So if you have applications in different statuses, as you may know, you can use different statuses to organize your entries as they're coming in. Maybe you have a specific set of applications that you just need to set aside. So maybe you have put them into the other status. Maybe you wanted to review them, so you put them into reviewed as you're reviewing the applications. Or maybe some folks needed to use the incomplete status to make changes to their application before the deadline happened. So that's all fine. But once you start your jury process, what I want you to make sure you're doing is putting every application that needs to be scored into the received status. That's because only entries in the received status can be seen on the jury side and therefore seen by the juror. So this will come into play later on, but just for now, make sure all entries that need to be scored are in the received status here. So that's about it for this page. Now we'll just go ahead and jump into the jury administration page from the left-hand side. Close that window. And then you'll see here we've got the jury administration portal. On the right-hand side, we've got this overview box that just kind of tells you the status of your call. Active just means it's not an archived event in CaFÉ, even if the application window is closed. Applications is the number of applications you have. This will show you the total number, not just those in received. So this will show you everything you have. The jury status, jury round, the scorecard style, which will go over all of that stuff, and then the jury type, which is how the jury was set up ahead of time to either separate or combine the images that an artist submits. And then as you can see, we've got the 3 steps of the jury process. So we've got setup, manage, and finalize. We'll first talk about the setup and how you can set up every setting before the jurors go in there and score. Manage is where we're going to sort the entries between invited and not invited. And then finalize is where we'll have a few reminders for, completing our jury and notifying the artists. So let's start by just setting up the call for the jury. So we'll start in the setup tab, of course. And here's where you're going to set your settings and preferences for your jury. And the first thing you'll want to do here is go through just each one and decide which option is best for your call. So starting on the left-hand side, we first have the jury status. Now, the jury status is what is determining whether or not the jury is open to your jurors. So when you are first, creating your call and accepting entries, the jury status is going to be set to not yet started. But when you're ready to start your jury, you'll set this to in progress. So if your call is still open and you're just getting it ready to leave and you want to, set all these settings up before you're actually going to close the application, you can leave this as not yet started, but once you're ready to go, you'll set this to in progress. So setting the status to in progress does a couple of things. So first, like I mentioned, it opens up the scorecards to the jurors so that they can actually see the entries and start scoring them. The other thing that the jury status in progress does is hide the status of the artist application so that on their end of CaFÉ, they can't see what their status is until you've completed your jury. So jury in progress kind of closes that curtain so that artists can't see, where their application is being moved around until you're actually ready to publish those results. So when you have them set to complete, that's the last step of the jury status. Complete then shows the status to the artist and does a couple other settings as well that we'll talk about later. And then if you ever just need a reminder about what the jury status means, we have this View Jury Workflow button, and that will kind of remind you which status means that the results are hidden to applicants, and that's the in progress setting there. So that's the jury status setting, and we'll go ahead and leave that in progress. Anytime you update any of the settings, you will want to go ahead and click save, but I'll do that at the end. So going down to the next one, we've got scoring rate. This one, you can choose how you'd like your jurors to score the entries. We've got 1 through 7, 1 through 20, and yes, no, maybe. So you'll set this up, and this will actually apply for every juror. So a juror will go in there. You can't have, one juror scoring yes, no, maybe, and one juror scoring 1 through 7. But you can change the scoring rate in between rounds. If you are conducting multiple rounds of jurying to further narrow down your selections, maybe you want to start with yes, no, maybe, you can do that. And then if you get down into further rounds, if you want to switch to a more competitive scoring rate, you can do that with any of the other scoring rates. So you'll just choose the one you want to start with. And for yes, no, maybe, this will come into play later on, but I'll go ahead and share it now. Yes, no, maybe is the only one that's, displaying as a non-numerical score, but it actually is numerical. So a yes will equal a score of 3, a no is a score of 1, and then a maybe is a score of 2. So like I said, that will make more sense later on, but just know that those do get converted to numerical rates. Next up, we have the scorecard style. So this determines how your jurors will view and score the entries. You have 3 options here, or maybe 2. I'll explain that. First, you have slideshow view, then you have list view and grid view. And I'm going to actually show you, I'm going to hop over to some slides to show you kind of what this looks like. So let's go over here. So this is slideshow view. It's kind of showing a little GIF right now of what that looks like. Basically, a slideshow view means that each of the entries are displayed one after another in a slideshow, and the juror clicks back and forth between the different applications. Within each application, the juror has all the info they need, and they can click to view images enlarged. But this is the one that is against a dark gray background and advances as a slideshow. The other one we have is list view. Now this is against a white background, and each of the applications, this GIF is going a little bit fast, but each of the applications is in a list. And as the juror goes through the information and views the entry and scores, as soon as they save, it kind of scrolls them down to the next in the list. So it's 20 per page, and they have as many pages as needed. So instead of clicking back and forth, they go through this list. Those are pretty similar to each other. The last one we have is grid view. So grid view is actually one that's only available to calls that are scoring by individual pieces of art, because this one will separate each image into its own little tile on this grid. Now this one's nice if you have hundreds or maybe even thousands of entries or images, and you need the juror to be able to kind of swiftly go through this and put their scores. They can definitely click into the images or click into the little file icon that you see up here to view the application information, but this kind of gives them a better at-a-glance view of all the entries. So like I said, those are the 3 options. If you're not scoring by individual artwork and you're doing more of a public art, request for qualifications, or any sort of application that groups together the application images, grid view is not available to you, but you can still choose between list view and slideshow view. So what you'll do is select the scorecard style. This will also determine the style for every juror that's on your panel. You can't customize between different jurors. The slideshow view will have some additional customization options for jurors, and they will be able to choose a little bit of a different view And but slideshow view is still the general umbrella term for that scorecard style. Next, we have scorecard sort. This is determining the order that the applications appear in. You can go by artist last name. You can randomize it. So if you do randomize and then click randomize order, that will reshuffle everything. Or you can choose application ID number. Application ID number is sort of the order in which that the submissions are entered. And that's because, when a submission is entered, they're given an application ID number. Sometimes because some submissions are created before they're submitted, it's not technically the order that they're submitted. It's more the order that the artist decided to start applying. So it's not exactly perfect, but application ID number is kind of a good randomized thing where it's not in order of the artist's last name. All right, and then next we've got the blind jury process setting. So this allows you to activate a blind jury or disable it. So if you click active, that means the artist's name will be hidden from the application. This means that the juror won't be able to see the name on the entry or the scorecard. However, just to know, if you are collecting artist statements or if you have application questions that the artist might accidentally reveal their name, the blind jury process setting is not going to be able to recognize that and hide those names. So you'd want to give your artist instructions ahead of time to make sure they're not mentioning their name in their answers so that it becomes a completely anonymous jury. But if you're not worried about the names and you'd like to show those to the jurors, you can set that to disabled. All right, and then we've got the jury round. Obviously, you're going to start in the first jury round, round one. This allows you to have the jurors score the entries. And once you narrow down your selections, maybe you make a cut for those that are not going to be accepted, you can then come here and change the jury round to round two. What that does is it creates a fresh, clean slate for the jurors' scorecard. So when they get back into the jury for round two, they don't see their scores from the previous round and can make new decisions. You can also then choose the scoring rate differently for that one. But some jurors like to see their scores from the same round, even though it's technically round two. You might want to keep it at round one so that jurors can see what they were given them last time. You can also set it to round two so that it's a clean scorecard, but I'll show you later how you're going to be able to download the scoring history so that jurors can view a spreadsheet of their scores from round one, but enter it into round two. All right, and then that's it for this setting here. So we've got those, jury settings that you're going to set up for each of the jurors or for all of the jurors at once. The next section and the next two sections over here is the scorecard display and application questions. This is where you're deciding what you want to hide from the jurors. So when you check this box here, that means you're hiding that particular thing. So over here, we've got the artwork information. And so this is standard for every call. You can choose to hide the artwork price, the artwork year, or the artwork description that the artist uploads. On the right, you can choose to hide certain parts of your application. So when you create your application questions, the questions will appear here in order, and you'll be able to choose which ones are maybe not relevant to the jurors and they don't need to see that information, or things that you just don't want to hide. Maybe your first round, you're not really going into artist references, so you can check that box and hide it. Later on, you can uncheck it so that it displays to the jurors. So make sure, again, when you're checking the box, you are hiding it. Sometimes it gets confusing and folks will mess that up, but check the box means hiding it. And like I said before, make sure you just click save here once you've set up all those settings you want to do. And that's basically it for how you set up those settings. And those are all the things you need to worry about before the jury actually starts. The next, and then the last thing you actually have to do before the jury starts is assign the jurors to the call. You'll see on the jury administration page, we have this section here, the list of jurors. Right now, you can ignore the fact that we do have a juror there available, but when you first start out a call, you won't have anything assigned, and it will just say no jurors assigned to this call. And you have two ways to add jurors. The first is to click add juror. And you'll go in here, and this is autofilling from my computer, but you'll just enter in the username and the password that you're creating for your juror. So you create the username and password for them, and I'll show you how to email them with their information. So you just kind of fill out their basic name, email, phone. I don't think the phone is required, or maybe even email. Well, email's required because it needs to log in with them. So you'll basically fill out this information and you click save. That will add them to the jury administration page, and you can let them know what their username and password is so that they can log in. Then the second way to do this is to click on the menu, go to jury, click on jurors. And this is where you're going to get a list of all the jurors you've ever assigned to any call or that you've created for your organization. So you can see we've got the list of active users. We actually have a list of disabled jurors as well. So you can toggle here, show disabled, show active between those. Now, what's nice here is that if you have a juror that comes back year over year or has multiple calls that they need to jury, instead of creating a new juror account for every call, what you'll do is you'll come here, you'll find the juror that you want to assign to your call, and you'll click View Juror, and you'll see a list of calls available. And then here you can click the one that you want them to score. So here I'm going to assign this juror to the call that we're working in today. And the information is all saved. If they need to update anything, they can, or if you need to, they can. Here's where you can also then send an email to your juror to let them know. If you click Show Emailer, it is a basic email form. This shouldn't be, it's weird that these are all check marked, but you're basically letting them know what they're assigned to. You can create a subject and a body of email that says, hey, you're officially assigned to this call. Here's your username to get in, and all that good stuff. You can then preview and send that email. But once I've assigned this juror to the call, I'm going to go ahead and click Save on this page. And they should show up right here. So this is that second juror account. Those are the things you need to do before the jury starts. You need to make sure your settings are set and that your jurors show up here. If they're added to the list but not shown up here, they still need to be selected with that call name there. All right, and as you can see here, we have, the juror name, and it shows how many they've scored. So you can keep track of how many they've scored along the way. And let's say you need to remove a juror score. Maybe they scored in a different round than they were supposed to. You can actually click the trash can. You will then have, I don't know how long it is, but some time frame to be able to say, oops, I accidentally clicked that button. Let me actually restore it, and those scores get back added in. So just keep that in mind. You can also, if you as the administrator want to add yourself as a juror, you can totally do that. That will give you your separate juror username to log into so that you see the juror side of things and you can see exactly what the juror will see. And you can even practice scoring, kind of test it out, do what you need to do. And if you ever want to come back here and just delete your own scores, you can do that there so that the scores don't actually get taken into account when you're doing the sorting process. So that's the process for setting up the juror accounts. So again, at this point, you've made sure all your entries are in received. You've gone through the setup tab and you've set up your jurors. So that's everything you need to do, and you're ready to go for your jury. You can do all this before your call even closes. It's totally up to you. You can wait until your call's closed and then just do all of this right before your jury starts. Anytime is fine. Just make sure that your jury status is set to in progress when you're officially ready to go. The other thing to know is that if a juror, you tell them, hey, you're ready to go, let's log in. They can log in with their juror username and password. They might see a message that says their jury status is not yet in progress, or that they don't see any scorecard at all. It looks very confusing to them. You can come back here and just make sure that the jury status is in progress, that they are listed here, and that the entries are in the received status. So I know I said that multiple times, but those are just the things to focus on. What we're going to do now in this hypothetical situation is pretend that my juror then went in and scored all 27 entries, which they have, and we're ready to go to sort the entries from in between invited or not invited. So when you come back to jury administration page after the juror scored, what you can do is click this button here, View Scored Applications. This allows you, if you then scroll down, it shows the list of the jurors' scores. So you can actually come in here. This is where you'll look at what scores are given to what entries. You can actually then pull up the application. You can't see it right now because it's in a pop-up window, but it shows the image at a larger view and shows the rest of the application. You can click on the application ID number to pull up the application for the artist. I'm going to close that tab. You can then, look at the score or any comments. Right now, it looks like this demo only has some scores in here. I might be able to see. Doesn't look like we have any comments, but if there is a comment, it would just kind of put it in quotation marks and give the comment display here. So this is where you'll look at the scores, and you can sort this table, or you can filter to show, alphabetically, or you can click on this once to see it starting at the low scores, or click it again to see it all sorted by high score. So go through here and look and see that we can change the status of the year, but this is not where you're going to be setting those statuses between invited and not invited. That's a very manual process and requires you to really make sure that you're setting everything right. This is just a quick overview of the scores that are given. So what you'll want to do is, when you're ready to actually sort them and filter out these scores or the entries based on the scores, you're going to go to the Manage section. Now, the first thing you'll want to do, you can do this in either order. Some folks like to take their high scores and put them into invited first, maybe then see if there's any room left for the lower or more average scores to get invited. I like doing this in a more elimination process, where you click Change Status to Not Invited first. When you click that, this is the page where you're going to be taking the lower scored applications and putting them into not invited. And you're essentially eliminating them from the pool. And so you'll see when we get here, we have, it'll list our categories. So each row is a different category. And you'll see here, I have a total at the bottom where it's saying how many are going to be sent to the not invited status. You'll see it says 0, and that's because we don't have our category selected. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the categories, and that, now that the categories are checked off, it's, pulling those into the calculation. You can do this different categories at a time. So if you just wanted to do your 2D folks first, or whatever category you have set up, you can do that first and leave the 3D or other categories alone. But we're going to do this all together. Now, in this demo, what I did was set the score to yes, no, maybe. As you saw on the previous tab, we had juror scores showing up yes or no. Like I said, those scores are then converted to numerical scores, where yes is a 3, a maybe is a 2, and a no is a 1. So let's say in this stage, I want to eliminate my no's, which means I'm going to eliminate anyone that scored with the numerical wise, anything that scored a 1. Now, when I come here, you'll see it says how many applications we have. We've got 27 total, 7 in 3D art, 20 in 2D art. It'll show me the average score for each category. So this is the average score given to everyone. And it will actually pre-populate this minimum cutoff score set to the average. So if you want to if you have hundreds of applications and you just want to do a big chop at the average and eliminate the lower average, lower than average scores, you can leave this as is. But because I'm doing this in a way where I'm only getting rid of those who were scored a no, I'm going to change this minimum cutoff score. So this minimum cutoff score, you want to set to the number in which any application scored below this number gets set to not invited. I know it's very complicated at this point, but let's say I wanted to eliminate my no's. I need anyone that scored a 1 to be set to not invited, meaning I need anyone scored below a 2 to be set to not invited. So I'm going to set my minimum cutoff score to 2. And I'm going to show this in a more visual way in a second. So I'm going to set my minimum cutoff score, and then it'll show you how many are not invited or supposed to be not invited, how many you'll have left in your pool. percentages, if you find that interesting to look at, you can see that as well. Like, let's say you need to cut off 50%, you can adjust this number until you get to that percentage you need. Then I'm going to click Show Applications here on the right, and you'll see the list. So total to be not invited, move to not invited 14. You can see here, okay, yes, all these that are going to become not invited were the ones that my juror scored a no. Looks like here we had a past juror that was assigned to this call and gave this one a maybe. In that case, if you want to leave that in, what you'll want to do is adjust your cutoff score to 1.5 so that it makes sure that, even if one juror gave it a maybe, they can still move forward. So you'll set that to 1.5, meaning anyone that scored below a 1.5 would be set to not invited. Once you get to this screen, you're kind of confirming that everything looks good and that, no one's getting eliminated who shouldn't be, and you click Change Status. So you haven't done anything yet. Now you're going to click Change Status, and you'll see this message that you've successfully moved them. And if you go to the Events Management page, you'll see now we have 14 remaining in received, but we have those 13 folks now in the not invited status. So you're not deleting entries, you're not eliminating them forever, you're just changing their status to not invited. If you made a mistake and you need to do that process again, you can come here and just change all of those. You can come to here and say change back to received, and that will reset that process for you so you don't have to worry about it. So don't get scared of eliminating folks, it's just changing their status. We'll go back to, applications, and we'll see we have 14 remaining in the jury pool. At this stage, this is when you're going to decide if you need to conduct another round of scoring, in which case you can just instruct jurors to return and update any scores, or you can change it to round 2 and start round 2 with a fresh slate of score cards. But let's say here I have my 14 applications. I want to invite all of these folks in, so I'm ready to change those folks to invited. I'll go to Manage. Instead, this time I'm going to click Change Status to Invited, and you'll see a very similar page. Again, I'm going to click on my categories so that they all become included in the calculation. Now here, the maximum cutoff score, this is where instead of the previous page saying anything below this score will get moved, this means maximum cutoff is anything above this score will get moved to invited. I'm going to actually leave this at 0 because I want to move everybody. I want to move every score above a 0 to invited. But if I did want to do this kind of in an opposite way and really set a cutoff to say only folks who scored above a 2 or a 3 can move forward, I would set it to that score. But again, I'm just setting it to 0 so I can move everybody. And I'm going to click Show Applications. Again, I can just verify, all right, these folks are good. I'm going to move them to invited. If I wanted to override any of these decisions and say, oh, okay, so this juror was, the 2 jurors were maybes on this person, so I'm actually going to put them on our wait list. I can change it to wait list. And when I click Change Status, it's going to, distribute that to the waitlist status instead of the invited status. Or I can just set to invited. So again, I'm just going to click Change Status. And you'll see on the Events Management page, that's it. We've got our folks invited and not invited. And when I return back to the Jury Administration page, you'll see we have, when I click View Scored Applications, it says no applications found. That's good. That means everyone is in their correct spot. So let's go back here. Again, we've got, like I said, we're all sorted between, and there should be 0 left in received. If there are any folks left in received, that means that the juror did not score those folks. So when you did those sorting process and you put in those, maximum and minimum cutoff scores, it only takes applications into account that were given a score. If your juror did not score that entry, it's not going to be taken into account, and you'll have to manually decide if that one should be in the invited status or the not invited status. The reason I'm saying this is because I know some folks have a process where a juror will go in and only give a score to the ones they want to invite, and that is fine. There's a way to go about it where you can then just take all of those scores that were supposed to be invited into the invited status, and then you just manually move everyone left and received who didn't get a score to the not invited status. But to me, that leaves up too much room for error. Let's say something didn't save properly, so they're inviting, someone and they meant to score that entry, but it didn't actually save. You're not going to be actually sure if that was correct or not. So you're not, maybe someone will get not invited who was supposed to become invited. So I know there's different ways that jurors like to score, but I would instruct your jurors to score every single entry and input a score so that there's more likelihood that it's, there's no human error and that they're becoming invited versus not invited, and they can be sorted correctly. So that's the process for changing the two statuses, or to the two statuses. Just to show you the final steps on this page itself, again, we have setup, manage, finalize. The finalize tab is kind of a list of things that you need to do to completely complete your jury. And the first thing on the list is the emailer. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to go to emailer. When you click on that, it actually just takes you to the events communication tab. So this is where you can email all of your artists, and you can come here. So to notify the artists, I'm going to come here, and this is where you can then choose, an email a status at a time. So what you're doing is you're sending one email to an entire batch of artists. So I encourage everyone to notify all of your applicants, even the ones that were not invited, just to thank them for their submission, because every artist put time, effort, and maybe money into applying to your call. So it's important to follow up with everyone. And then I also want to address that if you have any artists who had multiple entries and maybe some of them were invited and some of them were not invited, these folks, when you email them, should get two emails. One not saying not invited, and I'll show you how to list which ones were invited and not invited, and then one for the invited status to see which ones they got. So let's go into the process for inviting our folks first. Let's start with the good news. I'm going to click the invited status. I'm going to click draft email, and I'm just going to type in the fields here. You can CC or BCC anyone. You can click this to have yourself send yourself a copy of the first email sent. And this allows you to just kind of see that it was sent and what that looks like. I'm now going to copy and paste some information I have prepared. I'm going to have a subject line that says, "Congrats, you've been accepted," and a message here. So this is going to be kind of a generic message. I'm not going to address it to anyone because this is going to everyone at the same time. And so I'm just going to say, "Congrats, you've been invited." You can choose an attachment if you'd like for information about the event or exhibition. So that allows you to do that. You don't need to, but you can. Once I've entered the message that I want to send, I'll click preview. And this will say, okay, we've got a preview of the 7 emails that will be invited to the invited status. Now, if you all remember, we have 14 applications in our invited status. So why does it say 7 emails? Well, that's because the system is automatically deduplicating the number of emails that's going out. So of these 7 emails, some artists might have 2 or 3 submissions. So it's only sending it to 7 artists that have submitted 14 invited artworks. So you'll see this preview here. And then here it will also tell you these are the auto-populated fields that CaFÉ automatically sends. So it will populate the artist's login, their first and last name, the category they applied to, and then this actually here is the name of the artwork that was invited. So in this sent email, it will say, "Congratulations, Justine, you've been invited." And at the top, it'll say the name of the artwork that I got invited to the event. And then when I'm ready to send, I can save it as a draft if I want. That will save it on the events communication page to come back and revisit it later. I can go back and make changes, but let's go ahead and send that. And it might take some time to send, but it will start going out. And then you can move to your second email for the not invited folks. So I will come here and click not invited, draft email. I'll do the same process. Oops. I don't need to do this multiple times. And I'll just put the name of the call here. I didn't actually create a subject line for myself. Okay. And so this message is also going to be generic. It's going to say, thank you for your entry. Now, here's an important piece. If you are, if you have entries that artists submitted multiple of, you might say, we regret to inform you at least one of your pieces was not selected for the event. Please look above at the top of this email to see which pieces were not invited. So you can, send that out. And that means that when an artist gets it, they might get this rejection letter and say, oh, no, I'm not invited. But they might also get an acceptance letter saying that they do have a piece or two invited. So it's nice to kind of address that information in your email to kind of say, look out for another email if not all of your pieces above are listed, whatever that may be. Again, you can preview that and you can, it'll list that all the same. It's going to be the same process and you can go ahead and send that. And that's it. That's how you notify your artists. It's literally sending one email to the batch of invited, one email to the batch of not invited folks. Another thing you can do in your email is let them know if they have any questions about which pieces were invited. You can say that they can go back to their CaFÉ account and check the status of their application. I'll show you in a minute how we publish those results, but you can let them know that that's available to them if they have any questions about which ones were invited. So just real quickly, once you send your emails, there's a couple things you can do to kind of verify that everything's sent out. One thing is you can run an events communication bounce report. This will let you know if any artist emails bounced back. So what you do is you'll come to this page and you'll click the event that you sent the email for. You can also just do it for all your events at once. Then you're going to choose the date range that you sent that email. So because we sent it today, I'm going to save our date here. And I'm going to click Run Report. Now, you'll see we have a lot of bounces. These are because they're past CaFÉ staff members that don't have these emails anymore. So that's why you are seeing some issues. But hopefully you don't see anything listed here. It'll say no bounces found. And that's great because that means everyone's emails were correct. If you do see some bounces in here, what you'll want to do is find the artist's phone number to contact them to see if they have an updated email address that you can send their acceptance letter or rejection letter to. I mean, that would be kind of awkward if you called them about that, but so this is how you can check on that. Now, if they're listed here or if they're not listed here and it says no bounces found, there are possible ways that an artist might not receive the email because CaFÉ, we can guarantee that it's sent, basically meaning that nothing was bounced, but we can't guarantee it's going to be delivered. And that's because everyone has different email filters and issues, possibly set up. And if that's the case and an artist didn't receive an email, we can help you look into it. But this is where you'll check to make sure at least it was sent correctly. And then one other thing for emailing, what you can do is go to Events Management. To find a copy of the email that was sent, you can click on the status that you want to look for, and you can either find the particular artist. Maybe they had a question if they received an email, so you can search for that artist, or you just go ahead and click into one of those artists' application, and you'll see at the very bottom, we've got this email section, and that will list the record of the email that was sent. It'll say what date and what time it was sent, and you can actually click View Email here, and that will show you a list, a copy of the email that was sent. This is actually nice because this will show you what it will look like to the artist, showing those auto-populated fields. So it shows their login, their name, and then it'll show how it looks when that artwork titles are listed. If you're scoring by individual applications or by bodies of work, it's not going to say the names of the artwork. It'll just say, your application number, and it'll say invited or not invited. So that's how you view the email. One other little quick trick for emailing is you can click on the email address of the artist itself. This is our generic CaFÉ email, but it should be the email of the artist. If you click on that, it'll actually pull up an individual emailer. So this is only emailing the individual artist if you want to email them from CaFÉ. And that's the same process as before. And that's it for emailing them. Let's quickly go through the last of this process. So we've got the setup, we did the manage, we did the finalize, we emailed our artists, and we sent those out. The next step in the finalize process is to save the scoring. Again, you can save the scoring history if you'd like. You don't absolutely have to, but if you want to, you can. Maybe you want to keep that for historical record. And then the last and one of the more important steps is to reminder to go back to the setup page and change the status to complete. That is the last step you really need to do. So you come in here, once you're done sending your notification letters, you can change this jury status to complete, click save. And what that does is two things. It publishes the results to the artist so that they can see the status of their application and see what pieces were invited or not invited. It also lets them know that the jury is over and that, things are moving along. The second thing it does is it changes the setting that allows artists to archive their entry. So some artists will have multiple entries on their CaFÉ page when they log in, and eventually after a while they'll want to clean up that list. They'll go through and archive any call that they applied to that's in the past that they either were invited to or not, but they just want to archive those entries. They can't do that unless you change your jury status to complete. And I know this is a finicky last step to remember, but it's very important so that artists will be able to have access back to the application to archive it. So just remember that, jury status to complete. And that's it. That's the end of the process for conducting the jury. If you do have any questions about the jury process, you can go to our help center. If you go to that section there, we've got the jury process. This help guide will show you everything we talked about today. Again, set up, manage, finalize. It kind of just walks you through those steps. We also have a help for jurors section that will, once this loads here, help for jurors. You can send them a link to this page and that will show them how to walk through the process. And they basically have the options to view the instructions depending on which slideshow or which scorecard style you set up for them. Can the juror expand the artwork to see it big? Absolutely. That's not showing in this little demonstration here, and I don't have time to go into the jury side to show you. But yes, they just click on the image thumbnail and it views it enlarged. Same thing with the grid view. They can click on the image and view it larger. And nowadays, we actually have the jury zoom feature available so that once they're enlarged, they can view a full screen version or they can zoom in and out of the artwork. Is it possible to switch from 3 jurors to 1 different juror for the second round? Yep, all you would do is just disable or uncheck the access for the jurors so that they don't technically have access to the second round. I'm also going to show you how you can delete scores from jurors so that they're not taken into consideration if you need to do that for any particular round. And then how do you disable a past juror? You come to this page here, you'll click on whichever juror you want, and you just change their status from active to disabled. And then you click save, at which point they'll come up in the show, when you click show disabled, they'll come up in the disabled list. Same thing if you're taking a disabled juror account and you want to reactivate their account, you assign them to the call, you click active and you save that. So you can toggle it both ways. Is there any disadvantage to letting the jurors see the applications when the call opens? I'm trying to think. It's up to you. It really is. So I do know that some folks let their jurors see applications as they come in. They set their jury status in progress before the deadline happens, and the jurors can log in to see the applications and just kind of start to review. That's only up to you if you have your own process for reviewing applications for eligibility requirements first before it gets to the juror, or if you have, for some reason, only a certain window of time that you'd prefer the juror to look at artwork. Maybe you don't want, a juror looking at artwork for longer because they applied earlier and they get more consideration time for that specific piece or that application. So I think that just comes down to more of a personal preference of when you allow your juror access. but there's no technical disadvantage, and it's totally possible to kind of start the jury as the applications are still being received. Is there a quick way to show if applicants who've applied are eligible by taking a closer look at what they submitted in the required fields? So that is more of an internal review before you get to the jury side. So I would go to events management and pull up the applications by clicking on the status you want to view it from. So let's say I'm reviewing the received folks, but this is the not invited status. Then you just click on application number for the first one in the list, and you can view their application in detail, including any questions to the form answers that you've created. You can check their, location for eligibility, if that's a thing for you. You can look at their, artwork images and their artwork details. You can kind of go through each application in detail to see if they're eligible. You can make comments here and under actions. You can create tags. You can also change the status. If they're not eligible to apply, you can put them right into not invited and they don't even go to the jury. You can put them in withdrawn if that's how you want to organize it. But once you're done with that review, you can then click the next to go to the next application and repeat that process. I'm glad that helped. You can also do this from the juror. Like I said, you can add yourself as a juror, but only the administrator will get as much kind of detail as this application page shows and allows you to actually create comments and change statuses. So I would prefer this route. Can you have more than 2 rounds? Absolutely. I know that when I got to this page and I showed the 2 jury round 1 and 2, this means that if you do round 2, and let's click save, and you conduct your round, once you're in that, the next round becomes available as an option. So it just doesn't want to give you like a whole list at once. It's kind of adding the numbers of rounds options available to you as you go. I don't think there's a limit to the number of rounds. I honestly think you can go as you need. But I think 5 is like a maximum, but you can go beyond that if you want. If the artist was to reply with a question, would we be able to receive that email? Yes, because you're putting in a reply to email address. So that's required for sending an email, is to put in an email here so that when they respond to that email, it will then go to your email account. It's not CaFÉ only does it one way, only sends email. It doesn't receive emails in the system here, but you'll receive that email from your email address. Going back to jury settings, can you change jury settings differently between round 1 and 2? Yes, absolutely. You can set the scoring rate, the scoring style. You can have that all for round 1. And then as soon as you're done with that round and you change it to round 2, you can change any of these things to anything else. If you then want to, make it not a blind jury, you can change that. If you want to change the way that folks are looking at it, this is actually pretty common. Jurors might want to look at the grid view first to get that first wave of applications and a kind of a quick review to quickly eliminate some artwork that they don't want to accept. They might want grid view for that in round 1. But then when it's ready for round 2 and they want to take a closer look at the applications, they might want a different view for that. This concludes our webinar on the jury administration process in CaFÉ. I hope you learned some more about how to set up your jury, sort the entries, and notify the artist of the results. If you have any questions about your call or more specific questions for the webinar, you can email us at cafehelp@westaff.org.